As we get older, so do our parents. Occasionally, our parents, for whatever reason, need to move in with us. If this has happened to you or might happen, David Horgan and Shira Block, co-authors of When a Parent Moves In, are here to tell you about it. Welcome. Your book is called When Your Parent Moves In. What inspired the two of you to write this?
About 5 years ago, I had my mother-in-law come to live with me, and I was not prepared for it. And we had some bumpy times in the beginning, as you can imagine. So I started looking around thinking, well, there's got to be a book on how you get through this process. And I was surprised that there was nothing on the subject. So I contacted Shira and I said, there really needs to be a book about this process. And we got together and we created it.
And this is the book that you wrote, When a Parent Comes In. When your parent is moving in, or where you think you might have that happen to you, what are some of the things you need to know that you should really prepare for?
Yeah. All right, when your parent is moving in, it doesn't happen automatically that all of a sudden you wake up and your parent is elderly and can't care for themselves. Right. Usually it happens over time, it happens slowly, and you're not thinking that it's going to get worse. You think, okay, things have changed, and now I can accept this change. When you think about actually moving your parent in, you need to be really careful about the impact it's going to have on your parent as well as your own core family, because it is not the right decision for everybody.
Right.
And there's a lot of things that you need to think about. For example, when you take your parent out of their home, so much is going to change for them. Usually they walk out of their house, they get their mail, and now they don't know where they get their mail. They don't know who the mailman is. They don't know where to go to the store. So when you take away their routine, what happens is they expect you to then fill in the pieces. So a lot of the preparation has to be about how do you fill in the social and emotional component without you being the sole person responsible.
So sometimes you can invite your parent to live with you, or, I mean, this is sort of viewed as an alternative to sending them to a assisted living facility or something like that?
People make this decision at a time of crisis. They're usually freaked out. Mom's in the hospital, and they say, all right, we'll get through this, and let's just move her in with you, because you have the biggest house. And that's not a reason to do this.
Right.
This is something you really have to think through. Make the decision at a non-emotional time.
If you can. Dave and his family decided it was the correct decision to move his mother-in-law in. In my situation, it was the wrong decision to move my father in. Not because he didn't need help and he didn't need that kind of support.
Right.
It's because what he would need for his emotional and physical well-being, we couldn't provide for him. It was better suited for my sister, because he would require a certain level of attention and socialization that we don't have. We live in the country. We live a quiet life. And so it is not the right decision. One of the things that Dave and I did is we got together and we created a quiz to help people make the decision. Should you move your parent in or not? It's your responsibility to caretake your parent in a loving way, but how you do it is going to be individual.
So what are some of the things that when you mentioned one of them, what are some of the other things that you should think about when your parent is moving in?
Yep.
What are some of the things you need to remember about your parent?
Well, you need to see things from their side. A lot of people look at it, okay, my parents moving in, how's this going to affect my life and my family? What are they giving up? I often tell the story about how my mother-in-law gave up gardening and gave up her backyard. And I will tell you that after a few months, I realized this was so important to her. I created a little deed to the backyard, and I said, the backyard is now yours. Do with it what you will. It was this beautiful moment between us. We really connected, and she understood that I knew what she was going through. It's a big part of it.
Because really, when you said it before, you change their entire life.
That's right.
Bringing them in, or sending them to an assisted living home or bringing them in. Why do you think people are more inclined to maybe bring their parent into their own house rather than send them to an assisted living place?
Well, the language you just chose to ask the question is the answer. Do you send your parent away or do you bring them in? And I don't see it that way. No, we did not do assisted living. We had the resources to have someone go into his home and care for him that way, but that is very expensive and not everyone has those resources. And so how do you make the decision? If you have no ulterior motives, and an ulterior motive can be, I feel obligated, it's the right thing to do. You make the decision not based, you make a decision based on other factors. I have the biggest house, I could never do that to my parent, instead of looking at it, what is best for my parent. And a lot of people do have that stigma, is I don't want to send my parent away. You have
Right.
to change the language,
Yeah.
and you have to say things like, how do I best care for my parent in the most loving way? Because remember, this isn't a child. This is an adult who's lived a fabulous life,
Sure.
who served
The
you.
independence.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you move them in, sometimes they lose a bit of their independence, and you don't want that to happen.
The fact is, anybody over 40 should get a copy of this book. Because people walk around, they don't make plans of what they're going to do with their parent. The crisis occurs, they just move them in automatically. It's like a default.
Right. Or they, as to use the term, they send them to an assisted living home. They send them to a nursing home, something like that.
Yeah.
So when you bring the parent in, really quickly, we've got about a minute left.
Yep.
What are some of the boundaries and guidelines you should set up with your parent?
Well, we put all of that in the book. You know, maybe you're not going to have dinner together every night. And that's a really tough conversation to have with a mom or a dad, you know? But there's this core family unity that we think is very important, and it's got to be respected. As well, you want to respect their boundaries. You know, maybe mom doesn't want you going in her in-law apartment all the time, whenever you just feel like, right?
Right. It's privacy. When you take two adults, so now here's an adult who's used to being, you know, the matriarch or the patriarch, but then you have a built-in one. How do you blend them? You have to. I really think you have to create the alpha person in the relationship.
Sure.
I am the mother of the home,
Set
and
the boundaries.
I'll make the decisions about what my children eat and what time dinner is. You include your parent, but there has to be some guidelines about what's acceptable.
Sure. It can be a very difficult and stressful time for the family, so get a copy of the book when your parent moves in. Shira,
it.
David, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here. We
Thank you
really
for having
appreciate
us.
it.